I was the richest man in the world. I had thousands of legendary songs that had shaken the entire world. But at the age of 28, I had entered retirement mode. After achieving fame, money, and power, my biggest goal in life was fishing. I had decided to spend the rest of my life in peace, becoming a true fishing master. That night, I was sitting in my old, vintage-style living room, completely peaceful. I held a hot ball of freshly made brass beef instant noodles in my hand. The aroma was so overwhelming that I held my full attention. I picked up my chopsticks and was about to take my first sip when suddenly a loud knock resounded on the door. But the strange thing was that the sound had urgency but no strength, as if someone was banging on the door with the last remaining energy. I shuddered slightly, put down my chopsticks, put on my flip-flops, and headed towards the entrance. As I opened the old wooden door, icy rain and a strong gust of wind poured right in. I looked outside in the dim light of a motion sensor lamp. The next moment, my breath caught. A woman stood in front of the door. She was completely drenched. Water dripped from her clothes. Her hair stuck to her face. Her face was so pale as if she had no blood left in her body, but she seemed completely unconcerned about her condition. She was shielding her body, trying to protect a small child in her arms from the rain. Her hands were shaking, her fingers turning white from how tightly she held the child. My eyes narrowed. Even in that state, I recognized her. 4 years ago, she had captivated all of Asia with her voice. Pure, radiant, untouchable Pabwa, Shachinghua, and now whose life was caught in the middle of a media storm. I was about to say something. You hear, but before I could utter a word, she raised her head, There was fatigue in her eyes, pain. But behind all of that was a desperate hope. Save her. Her voice was broken. Her throat was hoarse. With each word, she felt like she was about to burst into tears. Please save my daughter. The next second, her entire body went limp and she started falling straight towards me. My body moved reflexive. I immediately reached out and caught her. But as my hand touched hers, I was shocked. The heat wasn't coming from her body. It was coming from the little child she was holding in her arms. I looked down. A little girl, maybe 3 or 4 years old. Her face was flushed with fever. Her long eyelashes were still wet with tears. Her breath came like broken bellows. Every breath felt painful. And in that moment, something happened that I had never imagined. It was as if someone had sent an electric shock straight into my soul. A strange connection, a feeling that cannot be explained in words. I was not a person of this world. I was a transmigrator. I carried the memories of 2 lives. But the moment I touched that baby, I knew one thing with 100% certainty, without any DNA test, without any proof, without any explanation. This was my daughter, my own blood, my only bloodline in this parallel world. I gnashed my teeth. My lazy, carefree personality shattered in that instant. I immediately picked up both Shaiqinghua and the baby in my arms and hurried inside the house. I carefully laid Xia on the living room sofa. It felt as if they would break like porcelain dolls with even the slightest rough handling. Her consciousness was slowly fading, but she still held my sleeve tightly. Her nails almost dug into my skin. Don't go to the hospital, she said with difficulty. We'll take a photo, please. I looked into her frightened eyes. In that moment, my face went ice cold. We won't go to the hospital, I said in a calm but firm voice. Now everything made sense. The entertainment news headlines of the past few days suddenly flashed through my mind. Pop diva scandal, secret child, massive lawsuit, contract breach, blacklisting. Maybe these weren't just rumors. Relax, I said. I'm here. No one will take your photo. Her fingers slowly loosened. I released my sleeve from her grip and lifted the furry little girl into my arms. The girl had probably sensed a change in presence. She moved her tiny hands restlessly, searching for something in the air. Then suddenly her fingers grabbed one of mine and held it tightly. Just that one touch, and my heart melted completely. I took a deep breath. Then I pulled my old Nokia phone from my pocket. The same phone I usually used only for playing games. I dialed an encrypted number. As soon as the call connected, an old but energetic voice came from the other end. Boss, finally you remember that you still own a financial syndicate. There was surprise and amusement in her voice. Shut up. My voice was as cold as ice. It sounded like a volcano barely being controlled. Old, I need a medical team right now. A pediatric specialist. The best one. You have 10 minutes. There was silence for a few seconds. 10 minutes, boss. A little difficult. 5 minutes, I said, looking at my daughter's flushed face. My voice was so cold it could freeze the air. Bring all your equipment, and no flashy supercars. Come dressed in disguise like the community medical team. If even one word gets out, every member of the board of directors will be out of a job. The person on the other end immediately grew serious. They understood the scale of the matter. Understand, the Apocalypse medical team is being deployed immediately. The GPS coordinates were locked. The call ended. I casually threw the phone onto the coffee table, landing perfectly in the half-eaten bowl of noodles. But it didn't matter. My whole world was in my arms right now. I pulled my daughter closer. I gently rested my forehead on her burning forehead, and for the first time in years, I felt that perhaps the true purpose of my life had just begun. I gently rested my forehead on my daughter's burning forehead. I leaned against him. Don't be afraid. Daddy's here. My voice was soft, but it held a confidence anyone could feel. Outside, the rain was pouring down relentlessly. But the strange thing was that there was no ambulance siren or helicopter roar. Beneath the dark veil of rain, 3 ordinary-looking gray minibuses silently pulled up outside the wing alley. At first glance, they looked like ordinary vehicles. But a closer look would have revealed these were no ordinary vehicles. Run-flat tires, bulletproof windows, specially modified chassis, every detail was military grade. Some wore blue vests with community care written on them in bold letters. They carried heavy silver cases. They hurried into the courtyard, braving the rain. At the front was an old man with white hair. The world's greatest pediatrician, the chief medical advisor of my private medical team, but a man who usually only treated the royal family. I was still standing in the middle of the living room. My daughter, she was in my arms as if I were some guardian daddy who would protect her from all the troubles of the world. As soon as the old man entered, his eyes first fell on the room. The old sofa, the simple furniture, the dull wall decorations. His lips quirked slightly. Perhaps he couldn't understand why his boss was living in such a place. But the next moment, his eyes fell on my daughter and his entire expression changed to professional mode. "Boss, give her to me," he said in a serious voice. Without a word, I handed the child over to him. What happened next was nothing less than a scene from a movie. In a matter of seconds, the entire living room transformed into a makeshift IC. Silver cases opened. Portable high-tech machines were brought out. Blood sampling began. Rapid testing began. The physical cooling process was active. Intravenous drips were prepared. Every doctor worked without a word. The precision was so perfect as if everything had been rehearsed. I stood against the wall, my arms crossed over my chest, my eyes fixed on every doctor. It was as if my eyes were telling me, if anyone's hand trembles even slightly, it will be their last day. Just then, a soft voice came from the other side of the sofa. Xia Qinghua had woken up. She suddenly sat up, panic evident in her eyes. "Where's Xianjian?" she asked, almost screaming. "Oh, it's fine." I gave her a glass of warm water. Her whole body was trembling. But as soon as she saw me standing still, her nerves relaxed a little. She turned her head and looked at the doctors. "Who are these people?" she asked. I lied without blinking. "They're volunteers from the nearby community clinic, staying around to avoid the rain." I called for help. I pointed to the old man, and he was a retired traditional Chinese medicine doctor. Very skilled. Hearing this, the chief royal physician's hand trembled slightly. The acupuncture needle almost hit the wrong point. The world's foremost pediatric expert, and I was introducing him as a retired TCM doctor. But the old man said nothing. He just sighed inwardly and continued his performance. Xia Qinghua didn't know much about medicine. Furthermore, she was completely exhausted both mentally and physically. She didn't think much of it. She just nodded slowly. Her eyes welled with tears again. "Thank you." "Really?" "Thank you." Her voice trembled. "If it weren't for you, I don't know what I would have done." I stared at her silently, and then my mind went back 4 years. That night, that bar, I was so drunk I couldn't control myself. That very night, she had been drugged by a competitor. What had happened was just the instinctive reaction of 2 broken people. We hadn't even seen each other's faces properly. The next morning, it was all over. After that, I tried so hard to find that girl. But she had vanished into thin air. Even the surveillance footage had been erased, and now I had her daughter in my arms. No, it was our daughter. Suddenly, everything became clear. She had seen her one night. After that, I endured the pregnancy alone. I gave birth to Chandala. I raised him alone for 4 years. A strange pain arose in my chest. I snapped back to reality and asked in a deep voice, "Why?" She looked at me. "Why didn't you come look for me?" The glass of water in her hand stopped midair. Her eyes filled with confusion. "Would you have come look for me?" she asked in surprise. "But who are you?" I was silent for a second. Then I remembered it was true. We hadn't even seen each other's faces that night. How could she have recognized me? I was about to explain something when the old doctor came over. He looked at me. I gave him a slight wink. The old man understood immediately. "Young man," he said with a serious face, "the baby is out of danger now." Xia Qinghua stopped breathing. "Really?" "Yes." The old man nodded. It was a severe fever caused by acute pneumonia, but treatment was timely. If it had been delayed another half hour, it could have caused brain damage. Now the fever is broken. She'll fully recover with a few days of rest. Hearing this, Xia Qinghua's whole body went limp. Tears welled up in her eyes. She began to thank the doctors profusely. But then the old man suddenly stopped. He took out the report from his hand. Then, with a strange look, he handed it to Xia Qinghua. During the blood test, I had also performed a genetic comparison screening as a precaution. His voice became a little strange to check for allergies, though perhaps I should have asked permission first. Xia Qinghua grabbed the report. She didn't understand the scientific data contained within, but upon reading the last line, her whole body froze. Her hands trembled. Her eyes widened as if struck by lightning. The report clearly stated that the probability of a biological father-daughter relationship between Shahan and Xiaoqiu was 99.99%. Suddenly, the room fell silent. Xia Qinghua slowly raised her head and looked at me. Her eyes were filled with disbelief, shock, and even more so as a hobby. Over the past 4 years, she had conjured countless images of that man in her mind. Maybe a bald businessman, maybe a corrupt director, maybe a stranger. But she never imagined that that man would be me. I just shrugged and smiled, trying to make my expression seem both innocent and responsible. To be honest, I said softly, I'm quite shocked myself. I looked at the report, then at her eyes, but it seems it was really me that night. I'm sorry. I looked into her eyes and said softly, I let you and our daughter travel alone for so many years. My words floated in the air. For a few seconds, the entire room went completely silent. Xia Qinghua pressed her lips together and stared at me unblinkingly. Her gaze scanned my face, as if assessing how dangerous I was, how trustworthy, and whether I could truly be trusted. What? Just then, little Jian, lying on the sofa, stirred slightly. Her weak voice rang out, Mommy, water. The next moment, Xia Qinghua dropped the report and ran toward her daughter like lightning. I looked down at the paternity report on the floor. A faint smile formed on my lip. The Step 1 relationship had officially been confirmed. After a while, the medical team quietly left. Only the three of us remained in the room. The rain was still falling outside, but the atmosphere had changed. The strangeness that had been there before had been replaced by a strange, odd worm on. Shan fell asleep again after drinking water. Her face now looked normal. The fever had completely subsided. But Xia Qinghua was still uneasy. She slowly stood up and rummaged through her pockets. How much do I have to pay? She asked hesitantly. I'll return it all. I was sitting on an armchair. The bowl of instant noodles in front of me was now completely soggy. I still took a leisurely bite. I pretended to think. That doctor's consultation fee is quite expensive. Her face went pale again. How much? I held up a finger. So 10,000. She asked hopefully. I nodded. Or else. I shook my head again. No. Her eyes widened. I mean, 100 crore, I said with complete seriousness. What? Her voice almost cracked. Are you crazy? What doctor charges 100 crore? I put down my chopsticks and made a very serious face. This girl's life is priceless, the doctor said. I looked at Jian. And if life is priceless, charging 100 crore doesn't seem unreasonable. Xia Qingyou stared at me. His face was both angry and helpless. I could barely contain my laughter. Then I softened my tone. But I leaned back in my chair and said, right now you're bankrupt. The company's blacklisted you. The media's after you. Wandering the streets with a little girl isn't a good idea. I pointed upstairs to the second floor. So let's do this. For now, I'll put this debit in your account. The entire second floor is empty. Stay here until you pay back the 100 crore rupees, or until you're able to protect Shahan from the paparazzi yourself. I shrugged. Xia Qing stood there stunned for a few seconds. Her eyes darted from my face, perhaps searching for some hidden motive. But she found nothing, because I wasn't really thinking about anything else. My expression was the opposite, as if feeding 2 extra people was a headache. She slowly looked at her sleeping daughter. Then she thought about the outside world, media watchers, company people, bosses, and then finally, she gave up. She said through gritted teeth. The same old stubbornness had returned to her eyes. But I won't be living for free. I'll cook and clean, and as for the money, she looked me straight in the eye. I'll return every penny with interest. I smiled inwardly and nodded. The deal. Over the next 2 days, my quiet cottage felt quite different. It was as if the house had suddenly come to life. However, Xia Qinghua still wasn't entirely at ease. She was like a man with a head injury, always alert, always cautious. She moved slowly through the house, trying not to make a sound. She cleaned the entire second floor so thoroughly that not a speck of dust remained. Every morning she would wake up before me and make breakfast. It would be simple rice, orange and pickled vegetables. But the strange thing was that it tasted quite good. On the other hand, Shahan's condition was improving rapidly. Fever was completely gone. Her energy was returning. But this little girl was so mature that it was heartbreaking. Even at 3, she never insisted. She never cried. It was as if she knew her mother was already deeply troubled. She would occasionally peek over the stairs looking at me with her big round eyes. And the most interesting thing was, her eyes were exactly like mine. Exactly the same. But I didn't try to rush it. I didn't force her to call me daddy. Trust is earned, not taken. But I knew that for this mother and daughter, trust was the most expensive luxury in the world. So I waited for the right opportunity. And that opportunity came on the evening of the 3rd. After dinner, Xia Chawa received a call. She went out onto the balcony, closed the windows. But it was all useless to my impaired hearing. I was sitting on the sofa downstairs with a book on quantum mechanics open. But for the past half hour, I hadn't turned a single page. I could clearly hear her voice from upstairs. President Jia, I am breach of contract. There was suppressed anger in her voice. But don't bother my family. After a few seconds, her voice grew louder. What do you mean? I never signed that contract. Then even more angry. That's a military signature. Then suddenly her voice trembled. Client. Her breathing quickened. Never. Her voice echoed over the balcony. I'd rather die. The person on the other end must have... Then slowly, only the sound of muffled sobs. I sat down. The book was still open, but my attention was elsewhere. Memories of the entertainment industry in the parallel world flashed through my mind. In this world, the cultural industry was highly developed, but completely controlled by capital. Traffic was king. Rainwashing jingles ruled the chart. Commercial garbage was called masterpieces, and those with real talent were suppressed. Xia Qinghua was one of those people. She wrote her own songs. She composed them herself. She refused to break the rule. She didn't play dirty games. That's why she had become a thorn in the eyes of capitalists. The sound of crying from the balcony above slowly died down. After a long while, a soft humming floated down. There was no instrument, just the cool breeze after the rain and her voice. It was the song that had made her famous. A traditional masterpiece of this world with colorful glaze. The melody was beautiful. The notes were perfect. The technique was superb. But as I listened, a strange expression began to form on my face, because my ears could sense one thing clearly. This song was good, very good. But it lacked what makes a masterpiece immortal. And at that very moment, thousands of legendary melodies from my past life began to awaken in my mind one by one. The biggest problem was that the song wasn't just painful, it was terribly painful. As the song progressed to its climax, Jia Qinghua's voice suddenly trembled. There was no flaw in her technique. The notes were perfect. The pitch was flawless. But her emotions were completely shattered. By the last line, her voice cracked. The next moment, the singing stopped. The entire courtyard was filled with the sound of muffled sobs. The pain that had been bottled up inside her for so long finally came out. I slowly closed my quantum mechanics book. I stared out at the balcony for a few seconds. Then I got up and went into the study. A soft yellow light filled the study. I straightened a clean white sheet of paper on the desk. Then I picked up the priceless Montblanc fountain pen nearby. In an instant, the pen started running across the paper. My hands moved relentlessly. Lyrics, melody, notes, arrangements. Everything was already there in my mind. I just had to put it down on paper. A few minutes later, the last note was complete. I blew lightly on the fresh ink. Then I picked up the paper and left the study. The living room downstairs was dark. Only a small lamp was lit. Jia Qinghua sat alone on the sofa. Her eyes were empty, as if all hope had been lost. A bank card lay on the coffee table, perhaps her entire remaining savings. Seeing me, she quickly got up and wiped the corners of her eyes. "Sorry," she said softly. "Did I wake you up? I'll go to my room right now." I didn't reply. I went straight to her. Holding the paper in my hand, I placed it on the coffee table. "If you like it," I said casually, "you can sing it. If you don't like it, the wobbly leg of the table will help you balance." With that, I turned and headed for the stairs. I didn't offer her any emotional comfort, because there are some situations where words of sympathy are just cheap. I stopped at the stairs, my back still turned to her. Then in a calm voice I said, "Yes, stop sitting and crying for no reason. My daughter's mother can't be a weak loser." After a few seconds I went upstairs. Only silence remained. Jia Qinghua stood there for a while. Then slowly she looked down. Her hands trembled, picking up the paper. In the lamplight she began to read the lyrics. Slowly at first, then humming. The melody began to flow from her lips. But as the song progressed, her eyes widened. By the time the song ended, her breathing had quickened. Goosebumps spread throughout her body. It felt like an electric shock. As a former pop diva, her musical intuition was top-notch. So she was the first to understand what she had in her hands. The melody transitions, the emotional progression, the lyric imagery, the structure, absolutely everything was several levels above the current market. This wasn't just a good song. It was a song that could define an era. The rain had stopped outside the window. Moonlight teemed in through the clouds and fell on the paper. Bottom right of the page, in the corner, was a very elegant cursive signature. Just the letter C. The next morning, a soft sunshine spread across the Phoenix Show courtyard. The smell of earth after rain lingered in the air. The fragrance of wildflowers wafted throughout the courtyard. But Jia Qinghua hadn't slept all night. She remained sitting on the same sofa, in the same posture, clutching the paper tightly in both hands. The edges of her palms had slightly curled from the sweat of her palms. "You are a distant pet." She slowly repeated the lyrics. The light shining through the mountain mist brought tears to her eyes again, for this song wasn't just a song. It was her own story. She too was searching for a way through the fog, and she had to be that guiding light for Shahan. Just then, the door to the second floor opened. She snapped back to reality when she heard a kick. I was coming down the stairs, my hair disheveled, my eyes half closed as if I were still asleep. I looked at her. She was still sitting on the sofa like a statue. "What happened?" I raised my eyebrows. "Did you think the song was that bad? If you don't like it, throw it in the dustbin." I said, looking at my son-in-law. "It's okay. Next time I'll write a song for you like Learn to Mia. That's what's trending in the market these days." With that, I went straight into the kitchen. A moment later, the sound of rice being washed began. Then a loud thump of a chair sliding from behind came. Jia Qinghua almost ran into the kitchen. She was standing in the doorway, her eyes fixed on me. I was leisurely cutting with salted oak. The knife's movements were so smooth that each slice came out perfectly even. Her voice trembled. "Did you write this song?" I didn't even look back. I didn't see the signature. I said, "Someone called C wrote it. I'm just a middleman." "Why are you interrogating me like this?" As if we were conducting a police fair. But Jia Qinghua wasn't about to back down. "Who is C?" she asked immediately. "Where does he live?" "I want to meet him." Her eyes wide. She was glowing with excitement. The arrangement concept of this song is unreal. The fusion of lyrics and melody is perfect. Creating such a masterpiece is beyond the reach of any top composer. I stared at her a few seconds, then said in a calm voice, "Come back to reality, superstar. Right now you owe me 100 crore in cash, rent, utilities, and food." "I gave you this song so you could make money," I said, putting the rice in the cooker. "As for the author, what does that have to do with you? Just tell me one thing." I turned to him. "Can this song make money? Can it revive your banker's studio?" Shuqing was silent for a few seconds. He looked at me. "Simple clothes, old house. A man deciding between porridge and noodles for breakfast." But when it came to a masterpiece that could shake the music industry, his attitude was like discussing the weather. This contrast was what confused him the most. A strange feeling was building up inside him. Absoluteness, admiration, curiosity. All at once, he gripped the paper tighter. Then he took a deep breath. A glint of hope appeared in his eyes after a long time. If this song gets released, he said softly, then maybe not. His voice suddenly firmed. This song will shake the entire industry once it's released. I'm absolutely sure of it, Xu Qinghua said, clutching the lyric sheet to his chest. The same sparkle that once captivated the whole of Asia had returned to her eyes. If this song is released, I can dominate the charts again. But the next moment the light in her eyes dimmed a little. Reality replaced hope. But she bit back a lip. Right now I'm blacklisted all over the internet. Shinwan Entertainment has warned every recording studio and distribution platform. No one will dare take on my project. No one will release my beat. She looked down. No matter how good a song is, if it can't be released, it's just a piece of paper. I laughed at her. Blacklist, I said, shaking the porridge. The capitalist's blacklist only works on the weak. I looked at her. When talent becomes so great that the ceiling breaks, those same capitalists will chase you like sharks, and then fall at your feet. I got up from the kitchen, got a hot bowl of porridge, and placed it in her hand. Eat first, I said. No war's won on an empty stomach. As for recording studios and distribution, I shrugged. They'll figure it out later. Who knows, some studio owner might lose his mind today and accept your order. Lieutenant Sa Qinghua grabbed the ball. Warmth spread through her palms. After sitting in the cold all night, she felt a little relaxed for the first time. Just then, the sound of tiny footsteps came upstairs. Tap, 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 Mummy, Daddy. Shahan, wearing pink bunny pajamas, came down the stairs. Her eyes were still heavy with sleep, but as soon as she saw me, her eyes lit up like two little grapes filled with light. She had never called anyone daddy before, but perhaps there really is some magic in bloodline connections. Or perhaps the security she felt in my arms that night had settled in her heart. Wow, I smiled and said, my little princess is up. I immediately went to her and picked her up, then started to swing her in the air. Shahan's laughter echoed throughout the house. Daddy, I'm flying so high. Her laughter was like a silver bell, pure, sweet, and enough to wash away all sadness. Xia Qinghua watched all this. Slowly, her eyes turned red. For 4 years, she'd been running from place to place with Shahan, hiding. But she'd never seen her daughter so happy. The void that had always been missing from her life, the father figure, had now been filled. I placed Shahan in the high chair. Then, looking at his disheveled hair, I frowned. Wait, I made a serious face. Now Daddy will show his secret skills. I pulled out the cob from under the coffee table, along with some colorful heirlooms that had been lying there for who knows how long. Xia Qinghua was about to say something. Maybe I should do it. She wanted to, but the next moment she fell silent, because the scene before her was so strange. The same hands that had just wielded meat cleavers, the same hands that once signed billion-dollar contracts, were now awkwardly fighting with a little girl's hair. This stand isn't here, man. I've got it wrong. The right side is there, I muttered to myself. Sweat had even broken out on my full. Honestly, this was more important than a $30 billion negotiation. I was tense. Shahan, on the other hand, sat completely still. Her mouth was coated in oil from eating half a salted duck egg. 10 minutes later, a masterpiece was ready. 2 jagged pigtails, barely recognizable as pigtail sails. But I nodded proudly. Perfect, I declared. I felt a sense of satisfaction as if Picasso had painted a new painting. Just then a laugh came from behind. Xia Qinghua was laughing, really laughing, for the first time in half a month. I glared at her. Why are you laughing? But her laughter only grew louder. I took a bank card from my pocket and threw it on the table. It has some money in it, I casually said. Not much, just a few 100,000 yuan. The password is your daughter's birthday. Then I took a big sip of porridge. And yes, the password isn't 68. Xia Qinghua was stunned. I can't take this. She immediately said, a few 100,000 yuan for anyone. I interrupted her. My eyes hardened a little. I don't do charity. If this song is a hit, 50% is mine. Normally, such a deal would be considered outright robbery. But at this moment, Xia Qinghua felt a sense of relief, because it meant I wasn't giving her a donation. This was a transaction. An equal deal. She held the card. Her eyes were filled with determination. If the song flops, she said softly, I'll even sell my blood to pay you back. I quickly waved her off. No need for blood. I finished the porridge and said, if your voice gets damaged while singing, that would be the biggest loss of Then I waved my hand. Now eat quickly and leave. Shahan and I are going to watch cartoons. Xia Qinghua stared at us for a few seconds. Both the elders and the younger ones were sipping their porridge with their heads bowed. Suddenly, a new strength arose within her. This battle had to be won for Shahan, for this new family, and for that heavy piece of paper that the world was about to call a masterpiece. After a while, I quickly got ready and left. The door closed, and with it the warmth of the house faded a little. I stared at the door for a few seconds, then put it down. I picked up my old Nokia phone, and went under the phoenix tree in the courtyard and made a call. As soon as the call connected, Old Ching's voice came from the other end. Give me your orders, boss, I said quietly, looking at the tree. There's an old recording studio in Beijing City. It's called Qinglong Recording Studio. The owner's surname is Gu. The sound of a keyboard on the other end lasted for a few seconds. Old Ching was probably scanning a database. Then his voice came back. Found it, boss? The studio is almost defunct. The equipment is old. Business is non-existent. The owner is deeply in debt. A faint smile appeared on my lips. Perfect, I said softly. That's what I needed. Old Chen was silent for a moment. He knew that whenever I said perfect, someone's fortune was about to change. His surname was Chu. I said, standing under the phoenix tree. First he was the top sound engineer at Shinwang Entertainment. Then he angered President Zhao. My voice was calm, but my words were as cold as ice. He broke a leg. Now he's running a small recording shop hidden away in Old Town. On the other side, Old Chen immediately said, yes, boss. We found the location. Old Town Alley 13. Good. I looked at the sky. The blue sky after the rain was unusually clear. Call Old Chu. Tell him that, no matter who comes to record today, even if God himself comes to stop them, they'll have to open the door. Old Chen began writing something, but I wasn't finished. Devil's junk equipment thrown out. Replace the entire studio. Get new ATRs for Casol. We need the original version from the Naples Museum for microphones. I don't care how you get it. If you have to airlift it, if you have to smuggle it, do it. The equipment should be installed in that dilapidated basement within an hour. Suddenly there was silence on the other side. Old Shen perhaps I was calculating whether I was joking or serious. But he'd known me for years. So after 2 seconds he uttered just one line. Understood, boss? He asked hesitantly. In Simang Entertainment. A cold smile appeared on my lips. What's the hurry? I said, let them dance for a few more days. When Qinghua's song is recorded, they'll see what a next-level strike looks like. My eyes slowly narrowed. If I want to make someone a star, not even God can stop me. Old Chan, on the other hand, nodded silently. He knew the boss had made his decision. And once the boss made his decision, the game was over. Meanwhile, the streets of Beijing City, Old Town, alley number 13, were so narrow that two people could barely walk side by side. Advertisements with fake degrees and custom stamps were plastered on the walls. The air smelled of a mixed smell of sting tofu and cheap cigarettes. Xia Qinghua wore a mask and sunglasses. Parts of the brim was so low that her face was barely visible. She clutched her document bag tightly to her chest, as if all her hope was locked inside. A few minutes later, she stopped in front of a dilapidated basement. A broken board hung overhead. Qinglang Instruments. Paint was half peeled off. A thick layer of dust covered the board. A glance clearly indicated the place had been in decline for years. But this was her last hope, because in all of Beijing there was only one person who could possibly help her. Old Chu was a stubborn old man, and a long-time enemy of Shinhong Entertainment. Xia Qinghua took a deep breath, then slowly opened the basement door. As soon as the door opened, a strong smell of stale smoke and dampness hit her. She coughed involuntarily. The light inside was dim. Broken speakers lay in the corners. Wires were scattered, and old recording equipment was covered in dust. In the middle of the room there was a worn sofa. A middle-aged man lay on it smoking a cigarette. He was drinking. His hair was turning. His beard was unkempt. A walking cane rested against his left leg. He looked like a complete loser. It's closed, he said without looking up. I don't want any customers. Then he gently blew a smoke ring. Smoke wafted through the air. Xia Qinghua slowly pulled off his mask. His face was tired, but still so beautiful it could take one's breath away. Mr. Chu, he said, a slight tinge of nervousness in his voice. It's me, Xia Qinghua. Old Chu's hand suddenly stopped. He lifted it slowly. Shock was evident at first, but then it was immediately replaced by mockery. Wow, he said with a laugh. That's our great pop diva. You got fired from Sing's $1 Million studio. Now you're working in a dog-infested basement. But Xia Qinghua didn't mind. She knew about his past. She knew that President Zhou had caused his broken leg. Behind her taunts was bitterness, hatred, and a lot of pain. Mr. Chu looked straight into her eyes and said, I want to record a song and only you can help me. Old Chu stood up with the help of a cane. His limp was clearly visible. Right now you're like a rat running down the street, he said coldly. Whoever helps you will go against President Zhou. I'm not afraid of that bastard, but I also have to eat. Then he asked, sarcastically, and by the way, do you have any songs left to sing? Xia Qinghua didn't argue. She simply opened her document file and took out a thin piece of paper. The same paper, the same masterpiece. She extended it to Old Chu. If you still don't like it after reading it, I'll leave immediately. Old Chu took the paper with a stern look. He mumbled, as if it were the last song in the world. His eyes went to the title, then to the first line, and in the next 3 seconds, everything changed. Just 3 seconds. Old Chu's face froze. His eyes widened. His breathing became his hands trembled. He was a sound engineer. No ordinary man. His entire life had been spent working with melodies, harmonies, and lyrics. So he needed just one glance. One glance to understand what he had in his hands. His heart pounded. He read the second line, then the third, then the fourth. The further he went, the more his face changed. Shock, excitement, disbelief. Oh, all at once. Suddenly he lowered the paper. Then with lightning speed, his hand landed on Xia Qinghua's wrist. His grip was so strong it startled her. We'll record. Old Chu almost screamed. His eyes were shining. We'll do it right. We'll do it right now. If such a song is suppressed, God himself will strike us down with lightning. His voice trembled. But this time not with anger, with excitement. I won't charge a penny. He clutched the paper to his chest. If this masterpiece is recorded in a broken studio like mine, his eyes welled up. It will be the greatest achievement of my entire life. Old Chu was almost trembling with excitement. He clutched the paper to his chest and, leaning on a cane, started toward the recording booth. But after 2 steps, he suddenly stopped. He slapped his thigh. My microphone broke last week. I haven't even been able to repair it. The pain was evident on his face. The equipment I have now isn't even suitable for this song. The room tensed again. But then the basement door suddenly opened. A group of men in black suits entered, white gloves, expressionless faces, as if a ghost had suddenly appeared out of nowhere. Xia Qinghua and Old Chu were both immediately alert. Old Chu picked up a wooden stick lying nearby and instinctively stood in front of Xia Qinghua. Who are you guys? The hostility in his voice was clear, but the leading man standing in front was completely expressionless. He didn't even reply. He just stepped aside. Behind him, 2 workers entered, carrying a huge metal case. The case was placed on the ground. Then one of them said, Mr. Chu, someone ordered this equipment and specifically asked for it to be delivered here. That was it. And then he fell silent. The workers began opening the case. Phone's layers began to peel away and the equipment inside slowly became visible. As the entire microphone was revealed, Old Chu's breath stopped. No, his eyes widened. This is impossible. He looked at the microphone, trembling. There are fewer than 5, limited edition, U-47s left in the entire world. Even national-level studios might not have them. His voice faltered. Who sent this? But the man in the black suit remained silent. He simply took out a small folded note and handed it to Xia Qinghua. Then, without a word, he turned around and everyone left as mysteriously as they had come. The basement fell silent again. Xia Qinghua slowly opened the note. There was only one line written. The same wild cursive handwriting. The same familiar style. If you want to do good work, you must first have good tools. Don't try to save money. Just sing your heart out. No signature, no name. But even that one word was enough to recognize him. Her eyes immediately opened. Tears fell on the paper. The ink faded slightly, as she understood. Everything had been prearranged. The man repeatedly said he didn't care. He said it was just dead recovery. But behind her back, he was clearing every path, removing every obstacle. He even arranged for this legendary microphone. Old Chu looked at the note, then Xia Qinghua's red eyes. Then he smiled softly. It seems a guardian angel is watching over you, he said softly. Xia Qinghua said nothing. He simply held the note to his chest. The next moment, the recording began. And this time, Old Chu was even more serious than before. On the other side, in the heart of Yong City, on the top floor of a skyscraper touching the clouds, lay the headquarters of the world's largest financial syndicate. This was his true kingdom. Even though he was currently watching cartoons with his daughter in an old courthouse, his will was being executed with flawless precision. Giant holographic screens floated in the air. Inside the hall, dozens of top-tier market experts and elite hackers were hunched over keyboards. The only sound audible was the sound of... The atmosphere was warlike. Standing in the middle of the hall, Old Chen said calmly, "The boss's orders are crystal clear. This isn't acquisition. This is infiltration." He pointed to the screen. "Lock down the back ends of all major music platforms. The recommendation systems must be hijacked at 8 o'clock tonight." The people in the hall began executing commands simultaneously. Old Chan's voice echoed again. "User search anything. Music, movies, weather, even search the big feed. Only one thing should appear on the top recommendation. Xia Qinghua's new song, As You Wish." Some people smiled, but no one stopped working. The second order. Old Chan said, "Bottom line protocol. The 2 million anti-fan accounts President Zhou has purchased must all be shut down within an hour." Red dots began to disappear on the screens. Millions of fake accounts began to disappear. The third and subcenter hall suddenly became quieter. Old Chan's voice became more serious. "The boss's personal order. Every penny of this song will go directly to Little Princess Xia Shanhan's trust fund. Not even a single cent should be missed." The entire hall said in unison, "Understand?" Old Chan nodded slowly. "The entire entertainment industry will learn a lesson tonight. The topic is there." His eyes grew cold. The cost of flirting with the wife of the world's richest man. 7:55 p.m. The air was so heavy, it could be cut with a knife. The upload progress bar was slowly moving forward. Old Chu's palms were sweating. He had mixed countless hit songs his entire life. But today he was nervous. Xia Qinghua sitting next to him wrung her hands repeatedly. "Don't we need marketing?" she asked worriedly. "Normally, hype is created before songs are launched. PR articles, trending searches, music critics, fan comments. But I have nothing." Her voice trailed off. "Xinhong Entertainment has blocked all my resources. I'm like someone stranded on a deserted island. No one will hear me even if I scream." "There's no need." Suddenly, a familiar voice rang out. We both turned around. I was standing at the basement door. On my left was Shahan happily eating a lollipop. In my right hand was a bag of sugar-roasted chestnuts. I entered, took out a chestnut, and then offered it to Xia Qinghua. "A good song is like gold," I said calmly. "Throw it in the mud. It still shines." I smiled and patted Shahan's head, and a strange confidence shone in my eyes. "Your song won't just shine tonight. It will blind the whole world tonight." I carefully picked up the small object and carefully placed it in Shahan's mouth. A slight, meaningful smile tugged at the corner of my lips. The winds of fate were blowing in my favor tonight. Just then, ding, a crisp notification sounded. A pop-up appeared on the screen. "Upload successful." "Artist yet." At that very moment, thousands of kilometers away, inside the Beijing Music headquarters in Jimzhou, Shaoli, a staff member of the operations team, was casually passing time and about to order takeout order. Just as her finger touched the phone screen, the data curve on the monitoring screen suddenly jumped at a strange right angle. The scale was so alarming that it would make anyone dizzy. What is this? Shaoli almost spit out his cola. Her eyes widened in disbelief. Real-time back-end traffic had spiraled completely out of control. The traffic that usually went to talkie writers or viral pops seemed to have been grabbed by some invisible force and forcibly diverted. All the traffic had collapsed onto a single link, a link that had been uploaded just a minute earlier. Over there, a young man in a college dormitory was searching for an English listening track to prepare for his graduate exams. Suddenly, a deep, almost magical intro melody echoed through his headphones, disrupting his entire study flow. Elsewhere, in an office building, a white-collar employee fighting insomnia was searching for relaxing music. But the song that appeared on her screen was called As You Wish. Just then, at headquarters, Shaoli practically screamed. Something big is going on, the manager. The core algorithm is behaving as if it's been hacked. There was palpable panic in her voice. The technical director came running in, his fingers darting across the keyboard at lightning speed. After a few seconds, his face began to change color. First suspicion, then surprise. And finally, his face went completely white. He slowly collapsed onto his chair. Shock filled his eyes. This isn't a hacker. This isn't a cyber attack. This is the violent states of pure capital, she said in a trembling voice. A power that no one can stop. Here, in the basement recording studio, I sat on an old, worn sofa. Across from me, Jiaqingwa was repeatedly refreshing a webpage on her phone. The anxiety in her eyes was evident. While I remained completely calm, my expression remained unchanged. A minute passed. Jia lowered her phone and laughed bitterly. Just 3 places, she said softly, and we've done that ourselves. Her voice was filled with despair. It seems miracles only happen in stories. But before she could even finish her sentence, her eyes suddenly widened. All the despair on her face vanished in an instant, replaced by shock as if she'd seen a dream. After refreshing, her playlist had jumped from 3 to 300 in the next blink to 300,000. The comments section, which had been completely empty just a few seconds earlier, was now filled to capacity. A single number flashed across the screen. 999 plus. How is that possible? Jia's breathing quickened. But it wasn't just the fast traffic. The real reason was something else. The song's quality had become a blast. Advertisements were shown to people in every corner of the city. Initially, most people were irritated, thinking this was another spam promotion. But as soon as the first line resonated, as the first melody reached their ears, fingers reached up to swipe, but they stopped. A middle-aged man sitting on the subway, who had been fired from his job just hours earlier, was looking at the lights flashing by outside the window. His suppressed emotion suddenly burst forth. His eyes turned red and tears began to flow. In a hospital corridor, a girl had been up all night with her critically ill father. A line from the song reached her ears. I wish for your Runyon. The next moment, she covered her mouth and began crying uncontrollably. Meanwhile, a student, constantly struggling to achieve his dreams, found courage again. As he listened to the song, he gripped his pen tighter. The comment section was completely exploding. The comments were growing so fast that it was hard to read the numbers. What god-tier song is this? I can't believe there are still people who haven't heard it. I was about to curse the platform for the random recommendation. But now I'm back and thanking you. I haven't heard such an emotional song in years. Is this really Jiaqingwa, the same singer who was trolled everywhere for her personal life? Oh my god, her voice must have been blessed by an angel. Was it just me who noticed that the composer and lyricist's name is C? This C can't be an ordinary person. Every line of the lyrics pierces straight to the heart. In just half an hour, As You Wish made a comeback no one had imagined. Number 1 on the new releases chart, number 1 on the hot tracks chart, number 1 on the trending chart. Every major chart in the music industry was held by it. On the other side, Shenang Entertainment's palatial office of President Xu was watching the city night view with expensive red wine in his hand. A proud smile of triumph adorned his face. He had spent millions promoting his newly released girl group Tonight. His plan was clear. Capitalize on Jiaqingwa's downfall. Take her position and take over the entire industry. Just then, the door slammed open. President Xu, his secretary, barged in without knocking. He ran so fast that one of her high heels slipped off on the way. Terror was evident on her face. Why are you so panicking? President Xu frowned and took a sip of wine. The pride on his face hadn't diminished in the slightest. The secretary held out the tablet to him with trembling hands. Jiaqingwa, her voice breaking. He's released a new song. And so what? President Xu let out a contemptuous laugh. His face displayed only pride and hatred. I've already spread the news in the industry. Now who will take care of? Would she dare recommend music? I don't think she'll be able to cause even the slightest commotion. She impatiently snatched the tablet from her secretary's hand and casually glanced at the screen. But the next second, her face contorted horribly. The red wine in her mouth splashed directly onto the screen of the expensive tablet. How could this be happening? President Xu jumped up from his chair. But he jumped up so quickly that his knee slammed against the edge of the desk. His face crumpled in pain. All his composure and balance vanished. His eyes widened with madness and disbelief. Has Q Music gone mad? Have the Nets Cloud guys lost their minds? Are they not afraid of running in to sing? He angrily picked up the phone on his desk and began calling the heads of major music platforms one after another. His voice trembled with anger. Hello, President Wang? What are you guys doing? We decided to blacklist Xia Qinghua. But all that came from the other end was a beep, beep. Someone called. The call wasn't picked up, or rather, no one dared to. President Xu's face turned ashen. He frantically made more than a dozen calls. Finally, the head of a small platform answered. His voice was extremely low, as if anyone overhearing would kill him. Old Xu, stop asking. We didn't want to do this either. So who forced you? President Xu roared through clenched teeth. The order has come from above, from the Bureau of Culture, even higher. The man on the other end spoke. I just received news. Several major Wall Street syndicates have put direct pressure on all major platforms. Anyone who tries to remove this song will have their company stock price halved by tomorrow morning. There was silence for a moment. Then a broken voice came from the other end. Old Xu, now you take care of yourself. There's no ordinary person behind Xia Qinghua. There's a true God standing behind him. The next moment, the call was disconnected. Only a long dial tone echoed in the room. President Xu slowly collapsed onto his executive chair. His mind was lost. God, he muttered to himself. That woman who carries around an illegitimate child who's so poor she lives in the slums. Madness flashed in his eyes. If someone so powerful was behind her, why did she live like a dog for 4 years? Why was I allowed to control her as I pleased? Years of power and arrogance in the entertainment industry had awakened the darkness within her. A glint of cruelty flashed in his eyes. I am the only god of this industry. Suddenly he looked at his trembling secretary. Contact Black Forest Studio immediately. He roared. Unearth Xia Qinghua's entire history. Uncover every secret of her life, and especially a venomous glint appeared in his eyes. Find out everything about her child. I want the entire internet to know what kind of woman sang this song. Let's see how she makes a comeback. Over there in the small courtyard of Huatong Alley, the post-rain moonlight was beautiful. A soft moonlight scattered across the blue stone path. In the air, the fresh scent of soil and grass wafted the room. Xia Qinghua sat on a stone bench, her phone in hand, refreshing the play count and comments repeated. Her face still held a look of disbelief. Number 1, she said, softly really. Number 1. Her eyes were empty, but a glimmer of hope had returned. I was sitting nearby on a small stool, teaching Xiao Shahan how to fill a chestnut perfectly without breaking it. I didn't even look up when Xia Qinghua spoke. I just smiled and said, that means the audience wasn't deaf this time. There was silence for a few seconds. Then Xia Qing turned to me. Her gaze lingered first on me, then on Xia Qinghe. That simple image of father and daughter unleashed all the emotions stored within her heart. Tears welled up in her eyes. These weren't just tears of success. They were tears of a sense of security she'd felt in years. A feeling of someone silently standing behind her. Someone who can stop every storm. Someone who won't let him fall. Thank you, she said in a trembling voice. I placed the peeled chestnut in Shahan's mouth and slowly stood up. Then, walking in front of Xia Qinghua, I gently tucked a strand of hair that had fallen on her face behind her ear. My movements were completely natural. My eyes were calm, but deep within them lay a strange power. Don't thank me, I said softly. If you want to thank someone, say it to yourself. You sang the song. You gave it life. I smiled slightly. Anyway, this is just the beginning. Diva, be ready. Tonight was just the opening. Tomorrow the real show begins. I looked her in the eyes and asked, when all the dames and monsters go crazy, won't you be afraid then? Xia Qinghua looked into mine. She felt as if the man standing before her was unafraid of any storm. She took a deep breath, suppressing all the weakness in her heart. Then a new strength emerged in her eyes. I am not afraid. The next morning, the sun shone brightly. But in the dark corners of the internet, a dangerous storm was slowly brewing. As You Wish was still ruling the charts. Streaming numbers had surpassed 500 million. The song was playing on every street, every mall, every hair salon, and every cafe in the city. But suddenly, new keywords began rising at an unnatural speed in the trending sections of social media. Xia Qinghua's hidden child exposed. The real truth about Piwa. The dirty secrets behind As You Wish. How did a mysterious sugar daddy save a flop artist? As people clicked on these topics, they were met with blurry secret photos and inflammatory articles. Some so-called insiders were claiming that Xia Qinghua had used unfair means to rise in the industry 4 years ago and was later abandoned after becoming pregnant. Suddenly, the internet's atmosphere began to change. The same people who had been calling her goddess until yesterday were now falling prey to rumors and bot armies. The comment sections were changing, and a new online war was about to begin. The entire internet was ablaze, raging with toxic comments, abuse, and rumors. Inside the courtyard, Xia Qinghua's hands were shaking violently. Her phone was trembling in her fingers, and her face had turned completely pale. The thing she feared most had finally happened. If people had abused her, she might have tolerated it, but now Xia Shahan had become the target. Without a word, I took the phone from her hand and threw it into the far corner of the sofa. Then in a perfectly normal voice, I said, don't look at him now. Let's eat. Where did Xia Qinghua's voice rise? But they were abusing Shahan, calling him master child. People had tracked the address. Some had even started, we have to do something. I didn't even look at her, and in a calm voice, I said again, let's eat first. My voice wasn't loud, but it carried an authority that no one could challenge. I slowly sat down at the head of the dining table, picked up a piece of egg and placed it in Xiao Shahan's bowl. The next moment, the sternness on my face vanished and I said in a soft voice, "Shahan, let's go to Pocket Mist." The little girl's eyes immediately lit up. Shaking her tiny spoon, she said happily, "Really? I want to go on the carousel?" I smiled and said, "Okay, Daddy will take you there as soon as we finish it." Shichingo thought I was crazy. She almost screamed, "Xiao, have you lost your mind? The paparazzi are swarming outside. As soon as we get out, people will surround us. Do you have any idea how serious this is?" I slowly raised my eyes. My gaze was completely calm. No panic, no anger, no worry. Just the indifference of someone watching a small drama from afar. Serious? I let out a soft laugh. Even the flies buzzing around for a few days are now considered serious. With that, I placed them on the table. I twirled my old Nokia phone between my fingers and said, calmly always, "Remember one thing, when a person stands on top of a mountain, the people lying in the mud below can't dirty their clothes. When the dirtiness you feel right now isn't because they're so powerful. It's simply because you're not high enough to hear them." As I finished speaking, a sudden commotion erupted outside the courthouse wall. "This is the place." A man's voice called out. The GPS was showing this location. Another shouted, "Hurry up, build the wall. That girl must be inside." A third voice was filled with greed. President Xiao said a front-facing photo cost 100,000 rupees. The next moment, several paparazzi with cameras began climbing the ivy-covered wall. Their lenses were pointed directly at the dining table where the three of us were sitting. Xiao Shanhan trembled with fear. The spoon fell from her hand and she cried out loud, "Bad man, bad man." Hearing her innocent voice, Shachinwa's face changed. She immediately ran to stand in front of Jahan and hid him in her arms. "Stop taking photos. This is private property. Get out of here." But before she could finish, the camera shot started firing like machine guns. Click, click, click. The bright flashes were blinding even in broad daylight. The paparazzi standing on the wall screamed with excitement. "Miss Chia, look here. Who's the baby? Daddy? Some sugar daddy? Some rich boss? What happened 4 years ago?" Dirty questions were constantly being hurled. Xia Qinghua tried her best to hide Jahan's face, but her body was trembling. Just then, the temperature in my eyes slowly dropped to 0. I picked up a simple bamboo chopstick from the table. The next moment, a sharp crack pierced the air. No one saw. When did I move? People only saw a blurry afterimage that flashed across the sky like lightning and struck the camera lens of the loudest paparazzi. There was a bang. The telephoto lens, worth thousands of rupees, shattered instantly. Glass charts scattered everywhere. The paparazzi screamed in pain. "Mary Ankin," he said. He fell face down against the wall. The next second, I kicked the courtyard gate open. I had no bodyguards with me. There was no security team. I was alone. But the pressure emanating from my body was so immense that the legs of the paparazzi standing in front of me started shaking spontaneously. I slowly moved forward and, looking at them coldly, asked, quote, "Who told you a photo costs 100,000 rupees?" My voice was calm, but the calmness held a threat that made everyone's faces turn pale. The man's phone was vibrating continuously. Bank notifications were coming one after another, saying all his accounts had been frozen. His wife was crying on the phone, screaming that the bank had arrived with a house seizure notice seized. The studio boss was frantically sending messages in a group chat, screaming that their studio had been blacklisted across the internet. In a matter of minutes, their entire world had fallen apart. Those who had just a moment ago considered themselves hunters had now become prey. The paparazzi's face was completely shattered. Only fear remained in his eyes. He said in a trembling voice, "I choose the first option." "Boss, no, Grandpa, I made a mistake." I had eyes, but I didn't recognize Mount I. Xia Xinghua watched all this in disbelief. The reporters who had been so proud just a few minutes earlier now looked like dogs running with their tails between their legs, all on their knees, trudged into the courtyard. Then they knelt before Shajian and began slapping themselves. "Little princess, forgive us. We are animals. We are the bad guys. Please stop crying." We fold our hands. "Please forgive us." Shashan slowly stopped crying. She looked at them with her big, tear-filled eyes and then looked at me in confusion. "Daddy, what are these people doing?" I went to her, picked her up in my arms, and wiping the tears from her face, said with a smile, "These people are acting. The show is called Bad Guys Learn Their Lessons." Shahan didn't fully understand, but seeing Daddy smile, she laughed a little too. I smiled back and looked at Xia Qinghua. At that moment, Xia Qinghua's eyes were filled with a scene as comical as it was satisfying. He looked at the reporters who had just come to crush him and were now rubbing their heads on the ground. Then he looked at me. I was standing with my daughter in my arms. I was in complete control of the entire situation, but there was no trace of pride on my face. I stood as if nothing had happened. At that very moment, he suddenly realized that from today on, even if the sky were to fall, there would be someone. If the sky were to fall, there would be someone. I waved my hand casually and said, "Okay, the show's over. Now get out of here and surrender yourself to the police. But remember one thing, next time you see me in front of this gate, change your route. Because next time, it won't just be a broken camera lens." The reporters felt as if their death sentence had been pardoned. They all got up and ran out of the courtyard. In a few moments, the gate closed and the world went quiet again. I turned and looked at Xia Qinghua and said in my usual lazy tone, "By the way, I think my egg is still on the table. If I wait too long, it'll taste bad." Xia Qinghua stared at me for a few seconds, then suddenly burst out laughing. First a laugh, then her eyes turned red. The next moment she dropped all her hesitation and ran to hug both me and Shahan together. Thank you, her voice choked. My body stiffened for a moment, then relaxed. I patted her back with one hand. Don't get emotional so quickly. Then I leaned close to her ear and whispered, the real show has just begun. A faint smile flashed in my eyes. President Xu loves to play public opinion wars, doesn't he? So I'll give him a gift he'll never forget. I said casually. He runs an entertainment company. I'll buy the entire entertainment industry and turn it into a playground for my daughter. Xiaqing looked at me as if for the first time. Zhang Shuwish had shown her my talent. But what happened today had shown her another side of me. And she realized that this side was probably just the tip of the iceberg. She finally asked the question she'd been asking. Who are you exactly? Her eyes were fixed on mine. Landlord? Doctor? God-tier composer? Or that boss they were talking about? Oh, I brushed off the dust from my back and stood up with my usual lazy expression. Then looking into her eyes, I smiled. Is it really so important to know who I am? I gently squeezed Jia Shunhan's chubby cheek. To Shanhan, I'm her dad. Then I looked at Xia Qinghua. And to you, I'm your creditor. A faint smile formed on my lips. Aren't these two identities enough? Xia Qinghua bit her lip. But your power, your connections, your methods. If you're such a great man, why do you live in such a place? I exhaled deeply, tired. So I slowly gazed at the courtyard. The old court, the small walls, the simple life. But they held a warmth unmatched in any palace in the world. For the first time, real fatigue appeared in my eyes. Memories of my past life, the battles of the business world after coming to this world, the countless conspiracies, the countless victories. I was truly exhausted. I had enough wealth to sustain generations in comfort. I had enough power to shake the entire world. But in the end, I realized that what I wanted most was a load of hot noodles, a few peaceful days, and a life without the constant fear of being stabbed in the back. Then I looked at Xia Qinghua and Xia Shanhan, and for the first time I felt the dream wasn't just a dream anymore. I said softly, and as for my methods, my eyes suddenly sharpened like a sword. Xia Qinghua, if you want to protect your little piece in this world, you must possess a power greater than that of those who come to take it away. I don't want to be a hero. I don't want to be a savior. But my voice lowered. No one has the right to touch my people. The words were soft, but they fell like a hammer on Xia Qinghua's heart. She looked at my back and her eyes filled with tears again. For the past years, she had been flying alone in the storms like a small bird, always evading hunters and traps. But now, for the first time, someone had told her she could land safely. There's a tree here. There's a nest here. And there's a hunter standing here to protect her. Then I suddenly changed the atmosphere. Well, now the drama's over. I said with a smile, dinner tonight should be upgraded. I need braised pot grips and extra sugar. Xia Qinghua laughed through her tears. She quickly wiped her eyes and said, okay, I'll add so much sugar that you'll die from the sweetening. Laughter echoed through Cotter. But at the same time, inside a luxurious villa in Jiangchuan City, President Shou was practically hysterical. His face was contorted with fear and anger. He roared into the phone. What do you mean you guys can't find him? You guys haven't found anything. President Shou's roar echoed through the villa. Are you all worthless? In a rage, he picked up an expensive bottle of Louis XIII Coca-Cola and threw it against the wall with all his might. The bottle shattered with a bang. Glass shards uttered everywhere, while a red stream streamed down the wall like fresh blood. Just moments before, he had watched the market value of Xinhuang Entertainment plummet before his eyes, evaporating by 3 billion. But something even more terrifying was ahead. Black Fox Studio, his biggest paparazzi weapon, seemed to have vanished from the world. The entire team had been wiped out in an instant without even a chance to respond. The investigation was all leading to one point, Wutong Li, and that mysterious man living in Wutong Li. He had exhausted all his connections, business circles, political circles, even undercover contacts. But everywhere he had found only 2 words, top secret. His personal files were encrypted. The ownership of the courthouse was encrypted. Even Xia Shahan's birth certificate had been changed to the system's highest security level, the S-Class classification by President Xia's secretary stood trembling at the door, clutching new information. The tax bureau wants to thoroughly investigate all Inyang contracts from last year. Her voice was trembling, and the investors we had previously identified withdrew their funding en masse. President Xia's mind went numb. He stumbled and fell onto the sofa. For the first time, genuine fear appeared in his eyes. He finally realized he hadn't kicked an iron plate. He had kicked a nuclear reactor. The man in front of him could have reduced his entire empire to ashes without even showing his face. But the next moment, his eyes flashed with the mad glint of a cornered animal. No, he even bared his teeth. I haven't lost yet. He had been in this industry for years. He had seen countless busts. The capital was terrifying. But in the traffic era, reputation was everything. As long as he had even one card left, the game wasn't over. Xia Qinghua, his voice laced with venom. You want to make a comeback? You want to clear your image with just one song? He laughed coldly. Okay, he ordered, looking at the secretary. Contact the director of Masked Singer. No matter how much it costs. We want the next challenger spot. His eyes shone with cruelty. If someone's protecting you online, fine. I'll destroy you on stage. He even swung his fists. I'll silence you in front of hundreds of millions of viewers. I won't let you sing a single note. If I can't play dirty tricks in the shadows, this time I'll play openly. The next day, the weather was exceptionally beautiful. The sky was clear and there was a light breeze. I was preparing to take Xia Qinghua and Xiahou Shanhan to Dreamland Amusement Park, the largest in Jiangsu. For children, this place was nothing less than paradise. But for celebrities, it was nightmarish. Since it was a weekend, millions of people were expected there. If someone recognized the famous artist, the crowd would rush in within seconds. This was why Xia Qinghua had been nervous all morning. I stood in the corner of the room watching her. Baseball cap, sunglasses, face mask, baggy jacket. She had covered herself in so many layers that she looked more like a secret agent than a celebrity. Only her eyes were visible, and they were filled with anxiety. She was constantly checking herself in the mirror, trying to make sure she didn't miss a beat. On the other side, Xiaoxi stood wearing a new pink princess dress. She had a Minnie Mouse headband on her head and was holding a teddy bear half her height. She craned her little neck and, looking at Xia Qinghua, innocently asked, "Mom, are you playing the role of the three-legged mutant ninja turtles?" I was sitting down, tying Jay shoelaces. Hearing her, I shot up my head and burst out laughing. Honestly, the similarity was amazing. I laughed and said, "Well, Ninja Turtles don't have as good a figure as you." Xia Qinghua immediately glared at me. Even behind her sunglasses, her warning was clear. "You're still laughing?" she said angrily. "It's the weekend. There will be thousands of people. If anyone recognizes me, crowd control will be impossible. Xiao will be scared, and the training scars will be gone. That doesn't mean people won't remember my face." I slowly stood up and walked towards her. "That's where you're wrong," I said, then took off her sunglasses without asking for permission. Then removed her mask, then removed her baseball cap and threw it on the sofa. In the next moment, her long, inky black hair scattered in the sunlight. Her hair shone in the sunlight as if it had stepped out of a painting. Her beautiful face was fully revealed. For a few seconds, I stared at her. Then, smiling, I said, "If you're going out for a walk, why hide?" I threw all the disguised items on the sofa. If you look at the world from behind sunglasses, even a rainbow appears gray. I bent down and held Xia Qinghua's little finger. And even Xia Qinghua wouldn't want her mother hiding like a thief, I said. "Am I right?" Shahan nodded immediately, but Xia Qinghua panicked again. My voice was filled with worry. I adjusted my shirt collar. I held Xia Qinghua's hand with one hand and Xia Qinghua's hand with the other. My palm was warm and strong. Just that one touch brought a strange of comfort to it. I smiled and relaxed. Then, looking into her eyes, I said, "No one will notice you as long as I want. Or rather, the whole world will pretend to turn a blind eye to us." Xia Qinghua didn't fully believe me, but eventually she gave up her resistance. Half an hour later, we arrived at the entrance to Dreamland Amusement Park. And as we stepped inside, a scene awaited us that Xia Qinghua hadn't even dreamed of. I could clearly feel how tightly she held my hand. Her fingers almost dug into my palm. Her entire body was tense. It was clear she had prepared herself for any eventuality. She thought that as soon as we entered the park, people would recognize her. Someone would point a finger, someone would take a photo, someone would make a video, and then the crowd would storm in no time. But strangely, nothing of the sort happened. The staff at the ticket gate simply scanned my phone's QR code. She smiled and said, "Have a great time," and let us in. There was no expression on her face that suggested she was the same pop diva who had taken social media by storm yesterday. As we stepped inside the park, we were surrounded by a sea of people. There was noise, laughter, and excitement everywhere. But the most surprising thing was that no matter where we went, people around us unconsciously maintained a distance. An invisible circle of about 2 meters remained around us at all times. No one was pushing, no one was bumping, no one was staring. The surprise was clearly visible in Xia Qinghua's eyes. I smiled slightly at her, but said nothing. She didn't know that I had activated the entire Skynet security system to ensure this half-day of peace. 200 plainclothes bodyguards were constantly surrounding us, mingling with the crowd. Some were taking photos pretending to be tourists, some were looking at maps, and some were eating ice cream. But their real job was to divert anyone who might recognize Xia Qinghua or try to approach us. Even more interesting was the fact that the surrounding people's attention was constantly being drawn to other things. Suddenly, some adorable robot dogs emerged from the bushes beside the road and started dancing. A crowd gathered around them in no time. Everyone pulled out their phones and started taking videos. A drone show began in the sky, creating colorful patterns. A little distance away, some people were distributing balloons while playing songs of trending pop idols. This sent a whole flock of fangirls fleeing in the other direction. Our family amidst the crowd felt like a calm bubble floating in a large school of fish. There was noise all around, but a strange peace lingered around us. This was the effect I wanted. I hadn't used my power to disperse the crowd. I had paid a much higher price to create normality so that Xia Qinghua could spend a few hours with her daughter without any burden. Finally, she couldn't help herself. She looked at me and asked softly, "What's all this going on?" I offered her and Jian 2 ice creams I'd just bought and casually said, "It's everyone's lucky day today." People must have found things more interesting than us. Look how well that clown is performing. I wasn't going to tell her the truth, obviously. There are some kinds of protection that are more beautiful when given quietly. Just then, Shaw suddenly jumped with joy. Carousel, she screamed excitedly, pointing away. There was a huge double-decker carousel spinning. Her eyes were shining. I smiled and picked her up in my arms. Come on, Daddy will put you on the tallest white horse. A few minutes later, soft music started playing and the carousel slowly began to spin. Shaw, sitting on the white horse, was so happy that her eyes were half moons. She held on tightly to the pole, waving at us with every turn. I stood very close to her, so I could catch her if she got even the slightest bit scared. There was no attempt to hide the love in my eyes. Then my gaze went back to where Xia Jinghua was sitting on the pumpkin carriage seat. She was looking at me and Shahan. Slowly, her eyes began to turn red. I could sense how precious this moment was to her. This had once been her biggest wish. No camera flashes, no schedules, no manager, no fear of contract penalties. Just sunshine, the sweetness of ice cream, music, and her own people. Then I caught her wiping away tears. Oh, I said with a laugh, if you cry so emotionally, the ice cream will melt in your hands. And I'm not going to do it, Shaching. She laughed. There were still tears in her eyes. She picked up the ice cream and pretended to throw it at me. Can't you stay romantic for more than 3 seconds? I asked. Romantic. Then he pointed to the Ferris wheel in the distance. That Ferris wheel, you see. I've heard that if you make a wish at the top of it, it comes true. I smiled slightly. Well, I'm a materialist, but I can be superstitious for you for 5 minutes. After a while, the Ferris wheel slowly began to rise skyward. There was a strange silence inside the cabin. Xiaxian, huddled against the glass, was looking down at the city, occasionally making excited noises. Xia Qinghua and I were sitting very close to each other. The cabin was small, and even the sound of our breathing was clearly audible. The atmosphere suddenly changed. Xia Qinghua looked down and said very softly, "Thank you." Her voice was full of sincerity. Not just for today, but for everything. I looked at her. The sunlight was falling on her face through the glass. Even the light hair on her face was visible. For the first time, she was completely out of defensive mode. So soft, so venerable, that my heart clenched slightly. I softly called her name, Qingna. She looked at me. There was trust in her eyes, warmth, and something she herself probably didn't yet understand. I remained silent for a few seconds, then said in a serious voice, "You don't need to thank me." I smiled and said, "I'm a businessman, and every investment should yield a return." Hearing my words, her heart seemed to stop for a moment. Confusion and panic flashed in her eyes. What return, after all, was I talking about? Her eyes flashed with panic. What return, after all, was I talking about? But the next moment, I gently placed my hand on her knee. The warmth of my palm slowly reached her coldness and began to calm the storm raging in her heart. I looked into her eyes and said in a very serious voice, "All I need in return is that from today onwards you just focus on shining on stage. Let me handle the rest." My voice was calm, but every word held unwavering confidence. The stage that was taken from you, the dignity that was stolen from you, the happiness that was taken from you, I will bring it all back. Each and everything, and not just back, but with interest. Xia Qinghua's head jerked up. Her eyes met mine. They were as deep as a storm hidden beneath a calm ocean. Tears welled up in her eyes. At that very moment, the Ferris wheel reached its highest point. The entire city stretched below. The lights, the buildings, the streets. Everything looked so beautiful, as if the entire world had been laid beneath our feet. The atmosphere was slowly reaching a point where words were no longer necessary. But then suddenly Xia Shanhan turned to look at us, her sweet, excited voice shouting, "Daddy, Mom, look, quickly!" We both stood together. I turned to her. "Look, there's Mom's name." She pointed away. We looked in the direction of her finger. A huge LED screen on a commercial skyscraper in the middle of the city was glowing. A very attractive advertisement was playing on it. Masked Singer Grand Edition. The mysterious singer, The Wonder, will finally reveal their identity. Who can in the legendary winning street? Below, in bold letters, it read, "This Friday, 8 p.m. live." But the real message was something else. The advertisement didn't feature Xia Qinghua's photo. Instead, it showed her iconic performance look from 4 years ago. Ordinary people might not have understood it, but every industry insider knew who it was referring to. I looked at Xia Qinghua's face. Her complexion changed instantly. Shock, panic, and then fear. Masked Singer. She whispered, her voice very low. "This show is funded by Xinhuang Entertainment." Her fingers went cold again. "They're forcing me." I understood everything. Releasing such a promotion without the artist's permission was a clear trap. If Xia Qinghua hadn't gone on the show, people would have said she was afraid of the competition. The tag of cover diva would have stuck with her. But if she had gone, another trap might have awaited her. A public execution, a hangman's bank. I stared at the LED screen for a few seconds. The warmth in my eyes slowly vanished. In its place returned the cold glint that a hunter's eyes have when their prey walks into their trap. I held Xia Qinghua's hand tightly. A faint, blood-curdling smile appeared on my lips. "President Xi," I said softly. "It seems that old Fox hasn't learned his lesson yet." Then I turned to her. My voice was firm and dominating. "If he wants to hear your song so much," I smiled slightly, "then we'll go." A cold glint flashed through my eyes. "But this play's script will have to be rewritten a little," I said, staring into her eyes and emphasizing each word. If you sing on stage, you will sing in such a way that his entire being shakes. You will sing in such a way that the foundations of Hua Entertainment would tremble. Then I asked Qinghua softly. There was a moment of silence. Are you ready for your contest? Friday, 8 o'clock in Studio 1, Zhangjiang Radio and Television Broadcasting Station. The most watched variety show in all of Hokkaido was live today. Masked singer, stage lights hanging from the massive dome ceiling illuminated the entire studio. On center stage stood a stunning music sanctuary created from three-dimensional projection mapping. Below sat an audience of 5,000. In front were 3 veteran judges, and behind the screens, millions of online viewers. The air in the backstage corridors felt heavy. Every contestant was nervous. Every staff member was rushing. Everyone could feel the pressure of this live broadcast. I stood leaning against the wall, watching Xia Qinghua. She wore a silver mask. Crushed diamonds were embedded on the mask, and the chimes and tears were painted on the corner of her eye. Her code name was Stray Cat Queen, not Goddess, Stray Cat. Because I had told her that the old Xia Qinghua was dead, and the one returning was a wild beast returned from the dead. I was dressed casually as always. I had my temporary assistant's badge around my neck. I had a thermos in my hand in which I had prepared Mavana tea. I was worried that her throat might get strained from singing too much. I looked at her and asked. The nervous Xia Qinghua took a deep breath. Her hands were ice cold. She spoke a little truth. The gatekeeper is the patient today. There was worry in her eyes. A top artist of Xinhuang Entertainment. President Shu had deliberately arranged her. He wants to stop me here. I opened the thermos and steam rose up. I handed her the cup and said, relax. Just because someone shouts loudly doesn't mean they know how to sing, he said with a slight laugh. When did I hand it to him? And anyway, a mischievous glint flashed in my eyes. Today's script isn't in his hands. I bowed slightly. Today's script is in God's hands. And the good thing is I have a long-standing friendship with God. Xia Qinghua involuntarily laughed. Her nerves eased a bit. But then the dressing room door slammed shut. The show's assistant director burst in. A plump face, arrogant eyes, and that typical colloquial tone in his voice. He looked Xia Qinghua up and down. Hey, Stray Cat, he said curtly. It's your turn. Hurry up. Then he smiled sarcastically. Remember, today's a live broadcast. If something goes wrong, even selling you won't recover the damages. As he left, his eyes landed on Xia Qinghua's vest. He flicked to the in-air monitor receiver. A strange smirk appeared on his lips. At that very moment, who was the cold glint in my eye? It all made sense. The receiver had been tampered with. Just 10 minutes earlier, President Shu was truly hell-bent on destroying her. Then suddenly the entire stage lights went out. Darkness fell. Only a single white spotlight shone on center stage. Millions sat in front of their screens. The audience of 5,000 held their breath, and under that spotlight, Xia Qinghua, wearing a silver mask, slowly stepped onto the stage. I sat in the darkness behind the stage, my eyes fixed solely on Xia Qinghua. Even without any heavy styling, she looked like a white bud blooming on a mountain cliff. The music began. A song like no other in this world, Upwards to the Moon. I chose this song because I wanted to leave everyone speechless with the most dangerous vocal techniques and high notes. In this world, high notes are often considered a singer's true strength. And this song was the Mount Everest of high notes. An ethereal intro begins us. It happened. And as soon as Xia Qinghua opened her mouth, her diamond-like crystal-clear voice captivated everyone in the hall. Faint smile graced my lips. But the next second, disaster struck. Just as the song was about to enter its first grand shriek, a tricky key change with perfect pitch, a terrifying feedback squelch erupted from the microphone. Erupted. It was so loud it felt like someone had stabbed a knife directly into her ears. Immediately, the backing track cut out completely. The entire studio went silent. I saw Xia Qinghua clutching her ears in pain. Her body twitched. She nearly fell to the stage. Her EP wasn't music anymore, but a shrill static noise of nearly 100 decibels. Even without watching the live stream chat, I could imagine the uproar. Some were mocking her. Some were doubting her. Some were confused. The presenters in the VIP box were staring at the monitors, perhaps thinking it was just her. It was an equipment failure. But on stage, Xia Qing was completely in despair. No backing track, no working earpiece. The questioning eyes of 1,000 people in front of her. Beneath the dazzling stage line, she felt as if the whole world had abandoned her. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. I knew what was going through her mind. Was everything over? The hope she had just regained would be extinguished again? No, that wasn't going to happen, because I was here. And as long as I was here, I wouldn't let it fade away again. At that very moment, I rose from my seat and headed for the stage. I stepped out of the darkness into a place where light had never reached. There stood a black grand piano. The very piano I had arranged in advance. I sat down in front of it. My fingers lightly touched the keys. A clear, powerful, crystal-clear piano note echoed throughout the hall. That single note held a strange silence. It felt as if someone had suddenly stopped everything. That sound, straight from the audience's whispers and noise, pierced through. The entire hall was stunned. Just then, a backlight flickered on. The piano lit up. And so did I. I wore a pitch-black half-mask, revealing only my sharp irises and dark eyes like the night sky. The sleeves of my white shirt were folded up to my elbows and my forearms were bare. My fingers danced across the piano. One note after another flowed like flowing water. The melody was vast, grand, even purer than the original track, more soul-stirring. I raised my head slightly and looked at Xie Qinghua standing in the center of the stage. She was alone, helpless. I didn't say a word, but my eyes sent a clear message. Sing, I'm here. Xie Qinghua stared at me, tears streaming down her face. But in that instant, the static in her earpiece vanished. The audience's doubts vanished. For her, the piano was all she could see, and the power emanating from my fingers. She took a deep breath. She closed her eyes, and once again she reached for the microphone. She picked it up. This time, her voice didn't tremble. It burst forth with even greater power. My piano and hers blended as if we'd performed together thousands of times. When she reached the high notes, the piano roared like 10,000 galloping horses. When she descended to the low notes, the piano softened like a gentle rain. We had never rehearsed. Yet our synergy was so perfect, as if our souls were beating in unison. The song reached its final climax. It was a nauseating experience for Coach Sono. Xie Qinghua threw her head back and unleashed 3 consecutive high notes, each note higher than the last, the horn brighter than the last. It was as if a phoenix were being reborn from the mallet. The entire hall trembled. My left hand flicked slightly. The piano spread like fog rising along the banks of the forgetful river. My fingers became a blur on the keyboard. The melody became a storm, and so did the storm. Her voice was lifting her above the clouds. Then boom, the last high note ended. The piano suddenly stopped. Xie Qinghua stood under the spotlight. Her chest was falling rapidly. Sweat was pouring down her cheeks. But at that moment, she didn't look like a singer. She looked like a war goddess, returning victorious from the battlefield. The entire auditorium fell in dead silence for 5 seconds. Then suddenly, the entire hall erupted. Thunderous applause, screams, cheers. It felt as if the roof would blow off. Oh my God, was it really a human voice? Who was that piano player? How could someone be so handsome? That companion had saved the entire This wasn't a disaster. This was a masterpiece. Mom is asking, why am I kneeling watching the live stream? The 3 veteran judges jumped from their seats. Their voices were shaking with excitement. This is the best performance of the year. Another immediately said, not just this year, the most mind-blowing performance in the entire decade. Life wasn't back on track. It was an equipment failure. Yet through pure talent, she transformed a disaster into a musical miracle. Xie Qinghua took off her earpiece and looked at me, standing near the piano. I slowly stood up. I didn't bow, just stood in the shadows and clapped softly, as if congratulating her on her victory. Like a true artist, I completely handed over that shining moment to her. I didn't want the spotlight. I just wanted to be the person standing behind the curtain, lifting her up. I could easily imagine President Shah's backstage, the wine glass in his hand must have shattered by then. Where did this piano player come from? His roars must have echoed throughout the lounge. Find out now. Who is that masked man? After the show ended, Xie Qinghua didn't go to the celebration party. After passing through the media and the crowd, she went straight to the nanny van I had arranged. The van's windows were covered with one-way film, which the cameras, flashes, and chaos outside were blocking out the chaos. Inside the van, it was strangely quiet. I was sitting in the passenger seat, my mask already removed. I had my old Nokia phone in my hand, and I was playing Snake comfortably. Just like that shining piano god Matani sitting on stage a moment ago, whatever had happened to me was just a small favor. A normal step in the process of protecting her. Xie Qinghua sat in the back seat holding a sleeping Shahan in her lap. The little girl slept soundly backstage. She had no idea the sheer drama that had just unfolded on stage. I could feel her gaze constantly fixed on the back of my neck. There was confusion in her eyes. Doubt. So many questions. Those god-level piano skills. My job during a live broadcast disaster. And that aura that kept everything under control. All this could not have happened to a normal landlord. Finally, she broke the silence. Have you studied music before? She asked softly, a little. I didn't even turn my head. My expression was completely casual. I'd once gone to Vienna to feed pigeons. I had learned a few things there from some old men. I didn't want to explain much. There were many things in the past that she didn't need to know. I just wanted to protect her peace in the simplest way. Xie Qinghua was completely speechless. She probably knew I was avoiding her. The car slowly entered Wotong Alley. But tonight was going to be a sleepless night for the entire entertainment industry. The live performance video of Left Hand Pointing to the Moon had broken all viewership records in just 1 hour. It had captured the top 10 trending searches across the internet. Millions were trying to guess the identity of that mysterious pianist. But for me, it was just completing a daily task. I wasn't interested in fame, not even in money. I did all this just to protect her. After reaching home, I picked up Jean and took her upstairs to her room. I gently put her to sleep. I adjusted the blanket. Then I went to the bathroom. When I came out of the bathroom after putting my clothes on, my hair was still wet. Drops of water were slowly falling. But as I reached the top of the stairs, I stopped. Xie Qinghua was sitting in the living room. She was holding some documents. Her face was white with shock. Her eyes were filled with complete disbelief. And those documents were the same ones I had left in the inner pocket of the black shirt I was wearing tonight. As soon as I got home, I casually threw it on the sofa. I immediately knew she had seen them. The documents were printed in English and French. The gold-plated logo shone clearly on the top. GMG Global Media Group. As a former pop diva, she understood the meaning of GMG better than anyone. It was the world's largest media empire. It had influence over half of Hollywood's theaters, Europe's largest music company, and even the world's Grammy voting committee. I was in the office, and among those papers were confirmations of GMG Group's 51% transfer, as well as a hotel and shake transfer, as well as a hotel takeover proposal to acquire the Greater China Business Division of Xiaowang Entertainment. I wanted to buy Siwang. Not just to expand the business, but to pay for it to show Tai so that Xia Jinghua could shine in the music industry without any obstacles in the future. What happened? My voice suddenly echoed behind her. Interest in my business empire began to grow. There was no panic in my voice about revealing secrets, just a slight helpless smile. Xia Jinghua was startled. The document slipped from her hands and fell to the floor. She quickly looked back. I was standing at the top of the stairs in the bath. Wet hair, open collar, and the freshness of a shower still present. Her face immediately turned red. I wasn't looking intentionally. She started stammering. It's all true. You're the boss of GMG. I slowly climbed down. I picked up the documents, dusted them off, and placed them on the coffee table. Can you tell? I said casually. Then I filled a glass of water and went to the window. I sighed, looking at the old parasol tree outside. Former chairman used to do me a favor. He forced these shares into my hand. I shrugged. I didn't really want to manage thousands of people. It's too much hassle. But recently I realized that having a little power is quite useful. I looked at her. At least it helps keep you safe. Xia Jinghua stared at me. Her eyes were filled with shock. She looked as if she were listening to a science fiction story. So why do you live here? Why do you pretend to be a landlord? She finally asked another question that had been burning in her heart for a long time. Xiao took a sip of water, then turned and leaned against the windowsill. Her gaze suddenly deepened, because it's so lonely at high altitudes. He slowly moved toward her, one step at a time, until Xia Jinghua retreated to the corner of the sofa. He rested both hands on the sofa's backrest and encircled her. The strong masculine scent emanating from his body immediately captivated Jinghua. When you have everything, his voice was low and deep, then you understand that authenticity is the most expensive luxury. His gaze was straight into her eyes. Most people who come to me come after my money or power. But only here did a faint smile appear on his lips. In the lyrics of those braised beef noodles, and hearing Shihan call me dad, I truly feel that I too am a flesh and blood human being. He gazed deeply into her eyes. There was a strange magnetic attraction in his voice. Now that you know my secret, he said, by business rules, those who know too much usually have only two ends. Xia Jinghua's heart began to pound. He nervously turned to her. I saw. His voice trembled slightly. Which end? Silenced. Xia deliberately made a dangerous expression. Seeing her shrink back in fear, he couldn't help but laugh. Huh? The next moment that mischievous glint returned to his eyes. He was smiling like a cunning old fox. Or so he said softly, become my partner. His voice was soft, but there was a strange determination in it. Be bound around me forever. Then there will be no escape for the rest of your life. He extended his hand and gently lifted her chin. His fingers lightly touched her cheek. Then, in a calm but firm voice, he said, Misha, just because you are Saihan's mother, I'm going to give you a special privilege. How about you become my wife?